Yes Music Podcast.
It's always fantastic to welcome Steve Howe back onto the podcast. So, welcome, Steve.
Hello there.
Great to have you back.
Thanks for asking me back.
Now, just before we go on to the tour and the album, I've got this random question for you, because I'm writing a book about Tormato, which may seem like a strange thing to write a book about, but I am.
Yeah, I'd like to see where this is going. Go on.
Yeah. No, there's just one question that I've been trying to find out the answer to, and I've never been able to, and that's exactly how and when the title was changed from Yes Tour to Tormato. And in your autobiography, you mentioned that the Tormatos were added to the original front cover. And according to Rick Wakeman, the new title was suggested by your manager at the time, Brian Lane, maybe as a bit of a joke when he saw the tomatoes. So what do you remember about that?
Well, I would say that I don't remember anything very accurately, but my impression, what my memory tells me is that I seem to remember that Poe and Storm, definitely. I mean, I would say that Brian Lane had nothing. I mean, I'm not trying to get Brian out of this, but I'm saying I don't think Brian had anything to do with that, because basically I remember this discussion. We met Poe and Storm, and they were going to do the sleeve, because they'd done Going for the One.
Yeah.
And basically they were back to do another sleeve, and they showed us stuff, and it was a bit like, well, and then the concept came that because there was a place called Yes Tour on Dartmoor, which is a big park, in Britain, we were going to call it Yes Tour. And I was like totally for this. I mean, TOR, what a word, it has historical consequences. And these things are mounds, in the middle of nowhere, where people used to stand on top of them so that they could look out if the enemy were coming or if a deer was worth catching, So these were like points of reference. So basically they went down there and they shot Yes Tour, and I thought we were onto something. And they had a map of where this was a fascinating direction. And then it got completely messed up, totally destroyed by a photo of us taken in, I think, what was Regent's Park in London. There's a picture of us in Regent's Park, just standing there like bands always do, looking a bit bored and the same as every other band. And basically they flipped it on us, and Poe and Storm were working on the sleeve, and they sent us a version, and it literally, I seem to remember almost I was in shock when I saw it, because there was this picture of us and there was bloody tomatoes all over it, And I thought, get me out of here. I mean, I can take a joke, but I mean, this is just disgusting, And then the idea. As I said, I can't really say whether Brian or they, but obviously somebody said, let's call it Tomato. But the thing was, it's a kind of sick joke because you've still got it spelt wrong because of the tour, T-O-R. There should be no R, as anybody knows, in tomato. So it could have been called Yes Tomato, but is it actually called Yes Tormato? Is it? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's got the R in it, yeah.
That's about as dumbass as I can say. So I'm being honest now. I mean, it's a long time ago, and I don't think anybody can be bothered to take offense at anything I'd say now about something that happened in 1978. But that record, I wouldn't mind talking to you more about it, because it was a nightmare to make that record. It was utterly, almost impossible to make it. I mean, sometimes Yes made a record that really shouldn't have been made, like the Paris tapes with Roy Thomas Baker, another example. We never should have done that, and thank God we never really released it. So I've got very strong views about that record. But there are a couple of things I like about it. Well, that shows you how much I don't like about it, but there are a couple of things I think are wonderful about it. But they're in the minimal compared to, but that's my version. I think it was all Poe and Storm's fault, and I would have thought they called it Tomato. But anyway, it was a sort of an in-joke. Suddenly, the only way we could go forwards with that was to think of it as a kind of in-joke album sleeve, Tomato. And what were we saying? We didn't even really disclose how important the Yes Tour was. Anyway, that's it. Move along.
So you're obviously in the US ahead of the American dates on the Close to the Edge 50th anniversary anniversary tour, which actually begins tomorrow as we record this, I think.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to be at the Royal Albert Hall concert back in June, which was truly wonderful. I absolutely loved it.
Good.
But it must be difficult, though, at the moment, touring for the first times without your collaborator of 50 years, the late, great Alan White.
But you see, for the last 10 years, it's not been that straightforward, although Alan's been touring, as we get closer to, the years before COVID, 17, 18, 19, obviously Jay Shalom was already touring with us because Alan was struggling to do the whole set. So we knew that, his physical strength was there, for just a shorter time. So that's why he did a lot of the encore work and didn't do a lot of the set. So we were already kind of preparing ourselves for the worst, if you like, I suppose, or because it is the worst thing that can happen, Alan losing Alan. But his momentum and his ability to play, particularly songs that we would have to debate a lot, about the arrangement, or if we'd ever change the arrangement, or if we got a new ending on things. Things were not easy for Alan, and we were very sympathetic, but we could only do so much about that. It was Alan's had those problems, and we were just there to help him, get through it. But obviously the thing was that he was a trooper to the end. He didn't want to give up. Maybe 10 years ago, I'd said to him, well, why don't you take a year off? Do you think you should take a year off, and get yourself, in better shape? And he just couldn't resist it, by saying no, because he just so wanted to carry on. And that was Alan's, continual spirit of adventure, that he really wanted to be there with us, and he would not give up. He was not going to throw the towel in.
Yeah. You have been playing on the Silent Wings of Freedom, which is one of my favourite songs, and obviously from Tomato, which I have an interest in. And it was great to see that in the set list. So what made you decide to play that after so many years of not playing it?
Well, here's the rub on that. Yeah, I mean, that song's been requested over the years quite a lot, and it's really rarely been played since 1978. Period. We may have tried. Now, one of the reasons we couldn't play it was, well, there's two reasons. One fundamental reason: when a record's incredibly difficult to make, it's actually incredibly difficult to play on stage as well. And that's a truism that I will stick by. But the other thing was, with that song in particular, it was very improvised. And a lot of the things were just done like spontaneously. So when I played something, it wasn't planned. Nobody said, oh, would you come in there? I just hurtled in because we were improvising. So it became an impossible song to play in its entirety. And partly one of the reasons was, for me in particular, was I couldn't really work out what the heck I was doing in certain parts of the song. Or bigger question than that is why I was playing like that. What was I thinking when I was going, all this stuff all over the track? And I didn't like it, and I was not going to learn it, because I'm not going to learn a guitar part I don't like, even if they want me to. I'm just no way. There's another option: you design a new part, which in part I've done with songs like Parallels and other tracks, where I couldn't really ever play exactly the same thing on the record as the record. But Tomato suffers greater with those problems. But on Silent Wings of Freedom, what I did was I kept thinking people are going to like to, if we could play that song, they'd like it. I think Billy even said, oh, I'd love to do Silent Wings of Freedom. I said, no way, Jose, I'm not going there. But what happened was I put it on and I thought, well, look, I mean, half of this song is great, the other half is not great. And, I don't like it at all. So what I did was I thought about it from an editing point of view. And I thought, well, it should start with something you can grasp, which is the theme from so it starts with the theme. I moved the theme that came after about 5 minutes into the beginning of the song. Now, the reason it was somewhere else was we kind of built up to it, if you like. Well, that's a theory, but I think my new theory was better, was like, let's start with something at least we can all play and agree on what the hell it is. And then as I went through, I took out bits that were, I thought were totally nerdy and weren't worthy of revisiting. So I came up with that version. It's 4 minutes. It's called the Silent Wings edit, and I'm responsible for it. And I told the guys, don't even ask me to change this. If you say to me, let's play this, I'm going to just say no. Let's not play it then. So I'm not very often an ultimatum guy, but with Silent Wings, I was not going to revisit after I did the edit and take suggestions that maybe we could do that bit or maybe we could add on this bit. I said to them, we either play Steve's edit or I'm not going to play it. That wasn't blackmail, by the way. That was my honesty to say that I refuse to play some of those bits from that song. These are the bits I like. So if we want to play it, these are the bits I 100%, I don't just want to play them, I 100% endorse them. Like I said to you, there are some great things on Tomato.
Absolutely. Well, I'm delighted that you did play that, and I thought it went down really well.
Yeah, and it's not often we play anything from, we only play Onward, which is the other thing I love from Tomato. That's really we played Madrigal in a new way without 300 zillion notes on the keyboard and the guitar. We play another version of Madrigal, which doesn't have a lot of notes, which is a relief because that version has too many notes.
Well, we don't have very much time left, so let's get on straight away to your new album then, which you've created from Virgil's unreleased material, and it's out now. It's called Lunar Mist, and it's the second album of collaborative material after Nexus, which I do have to say is a favourite of mine. I play it often. And you said in the press release that the pieces on the new album have a sort of connection in spirit to Nexus. And the title track perhaps is one that you worked on as part of the time you were working on the previous album. But you also mentioned there's some broader inventiveness from Virgil on this one. So would you prefer these two albums to be played as a pair? Do you think they work together?
Yeah, they do. But I'd almost think that, it depends how you want to receive your indulgence of two albums from the same collaborators. There would be two ways to look at it. I would almost think that it might work better to actually play Lunar Mist first and then go to Nexus. The reason I say that is I undoubtedly have to say that both Dylan and I and the family generally love Virgil's production so much, and his keyboard work on Nexus is incredible. I mean, I'll just mention that, not because I feel good saying this, but because it's true. I conceived the idea of playing on Virgil's piano tracks, and I started doing that, and he said, yeah, go ahead. And then he showed me what he had underneath the tracks that I hadn't heard yet, and yet I'd been playing like a guitar and keyboard duo. And then suddenly he releases all these other tracks, like drums and a big bass going, keyboard bass, and all these textures. I went, Virgil, that's another album. I've got to rethink. Okay, let's do this album. But it's not the album I thought I was going to do with you, because I thought it's just like keyboard and guitar, a duet. Yeah. Instead, it's a fully fledged production. Well, talk about fully fledged. And that's why I'd recommend Lunar Mist as a sort of intro to the idea of what Virgil and Steve Howe do. And then the indulgence would be to play Nexus second, just because it's completely produced by him. And there's a multitude more of keyboard texturing going on there, where there's stuff I didn't even remember. I accepted everything that came forwards when he gave me more tracks to play with, more dense arrangements. But I think that would be a good way. I think they do go together, but it would be either, if you want to jump in the deep end and hear Nexus, then you hear the wealth of what Virgil was doing. And then you kind of would follow on the story chronologically with me, is to kind of say, well, no, we're not doing that. That's why Lunar Mist is so important as an opening track, because it is Virgil's production. And it kind of ties the two in. So there's two ways: either, introduce yourself and then go to the big course, or kind of start with the big course and then follow chronologically how we develop the idea. I think both make sense.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, on the new album, I do love the three songs in particular, Plexus and A Month in the Sun. which I think have a great feel, and drums and some very exciting guitar work. And the other one that I really like is the last one, which is the Martian Mood.
Yeah.
And that's great fun. It's got some fantastic synth sounds, and it's quite sort of science fiction sounding as well. So was that mostly Virgil's intention and his inclusion of those sort of spacey sounds?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that was the last track to come on board on the album, because some of the other ones, like you say, where he's drumming and he's got his drumming and offered the guitar to be quite, because I'm not dominating all the tracks, but I'm complimenting most of them. But on some of them, it's a great guitar opportunity, and I can't resist it. Whether it's the one with the steel or whether it's I'm playing the Strat with my fingers, which is not something I do very often. So I love the times when I get to do things I don't do too often, and that's the whole reason for doing projects like this, and particularly with Virgil. But going on to the final track, the Martian Mood kind of thing. Now, that was one of the 3 or 4 tracks that I actually had on multi-tracks that he'd recorded at our own studio. All the others he'd recorded on his laptop and in studios where he'd worked. But Luna, the Martian one was one of the tracks. So I was kind of resistant at first. I thought, I don't know if this is too kind of out there. I mean, but it wasn't. It demonstrated, a lot of Virgil's fun with his synthesis ideas and how much he could project these onto the track. So it's and then of course his drums come in, which we kind of like found a way of saving. Or in fact, they were never on the whole track, but we liked where we introduced them and as a development for the song. But that shows you that Virgil had quite a unique way of thinking about a theme, because it's a very obscure theme. It's more like a bass theme. So really, there wasn't a lot going on that track besides this kind of this kind of like spooky kind of thing. And basically, I stuck some steel guitars on and some rhythm guitars that emphasize the rhythmical aspect of the song, which you don't know where it is at first because the drums aren't playing, and as they never did. But when I'm going, this kind of like throwing off the stabs.
Yes.
So as I gradually started to center in on the track, and then I found the steel was strange enough, if you like, to kind of be part of this Virgil's world of the mini Moog. So I think it was originally called something about the Moog. It had a Moog title.
Right.
It was called something Moog, or that's why the M word was important. But certainly Martian came up, and Mood. So basically, I'd say it's one of the most unusual tracks on it, because there is a wonderful tendency, I think, on Luminous in the melodic variety of colors and textures, particularly with Maria's theme. The more you know, there's a lilting beauty, and sometimes a good reference point for me was some of the little new age music that I'd done in the late 80s, early 2000s, with people like Paul Sutin, where I'd started to understand how little is sometimes much better than more, So there's a tendency, for musicians and me, and on Tomato, that more is better. The more you do, it's better. I don't believe that. I believe the less you do is better, and the more space you give yourself and music. So, but the strange thing is, there's kind of neither on Martian Mood. There's neither of those things. It's a kind of quagmire of different sort of like. It's really fun. It's a fun jostle, if you like. It isn't like a musical statement. It's much more of a textual statement of intent, but more like more to do with hammer horror or science fiction film.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I wanted to ask you about Virgil himself, and he was clearly, from these 2 albums, a musician with a wide range of skills and abilities. How much do you think of that was what he developed from growing up in such a musical household?
Well, a very big part of it. I mean, some of the things he did, like he was a DJ as well. So some of the things were very much culturally timed, to be right for his for his era, in his life. And obviously we wish that had extended to a full life. But basically, some of this other things came through because of the family. I mean, even our daughters, for a while, were quite musical. My eldest daughter, Georgia, I remember she said to me one day, because she could read music and play the piano. And then she said to me in a very nice way, but very firm way, she said, "Dad, don't ever think I'm going to be a musician." She didn't want me to run away with the idea that because she could read music and play things now, that, put her on stage. Georgia was not going to do that, and nor was Steph. And I'm very proud of them for taking the choice and being very firm about it, that this was not going to be their career. They'd seen what I did, and then they'd seen Dylan and Virgil go leaping off, as they have done, and into the music. And they were like, no, that's not for us. So that's a charming thing about it. But Virgil, as what he picked up from the love of music from Dylan and I in particular, and my wife Jan, she had her own thing. But I can remember Dylan, he got into Presley, he got into Duran Duran, he got into that. And Virgil was the same. He liked Led Zeppelin, he liked a variety of things. He knew what a good sound was, So basically he was very open. And I think that's one of the things the family taught him, was that we're an open family. We listen to classical music, we listen to all sorts of music and treat it equally. Or if not, sometimes the superiority is in the wealth of harmony and structure and ingenuity. I mean, I like the Verve, for instance, but I can't compare it to Mozart, can I? Because you can't do that. But it doesn't mean that neither should be in my life, or one of them shouldn't have been in my life. No, all music is in my life. And I think that's what they picked up, and that's what Virgil believed 100% as well. And so the facets were that his world of friends, musical, and the era he was brought music I could not understand at all, like rap, all that whole thing, bass and drum, the whole thing. There were so many new terms, and basically I didn't like any of them. So that's my age, that I can say that with honesty, because, it's true. But the other thing is, there are obviously perimeters to where I can go in music. And, what I just cited, I like Libertines. I thought they were a great band. If they could just keep it together long enough to do another record, But I love bands that are on the edge of, exploding, and this is what rock music sounded like to me when I was young, when Bill Haley came along and Elvis came along. It was really exciting, and that's how people feel about some of the music that Virgil liked that I didn't, So I give him that space. And of course his friends were, they were all involved in this kind of musical direction. So Virgil had a lot from the family, but he had a lot from his own experience.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm delighted that you've managed to create these two records, which are lovely. I do love them.
Right.
And thank you very much indeed for coming to talk to us again today.
All right, then. Well, it's nice to talk to you. You've been very sweet. Thanks a lot. And of course, we love everybody who loves our music, or particularly Virgil's music. So very sweet. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Olá, sou o Miguel Falcão, de